Lots to talk about in this hour. We're going to return to our thoughts and particularly your calls and messages about Keir Starmer saying that Britain simply isn't working as the government unveils its flagship back-to-work plan. I'd say the government isn't working, but it's a flagship back-to-work plan straight after putting national insurance up, minimum wage up. I'm all in favour of minimum wage going up, but that does make it harder for employers to afford to employ people. But it does so vitally doesn't include a crackdown on sickness benefits. I mean, duh. This is the key thing you need to be dealing with. We're also going to be talking about that Supreme Court case. Judges are hearing today and tomorrow, considering the definition of what a woman is in law. It's a landmark case brought by the campaign group for Women Scotland. This, by the way, is J.K. Rowling, very much backing for Women Scotland. She's criticised British Transport Police for rules that allow transgender officers, i.e. men who claim they are women, to strip search women suspects, or just women generally.
Yes.
Yeah, not happy with that. We used to call that sexual assault. But there we are. Also, ministers are set to announce millions in extra legal aid. Brilliant. You think, well, it could help people who really need to fight for the justice. No, it's to help clear the asylum backlog in an increased effort to move migrants out of hotels. So it's basically legal aid for illegal migrants. Brilliant. That'll be very popular with everybody. This is Talk. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense. Also, as you will have just heard, I think, in the news, sad news, the world's oldest man, John Tinniswood, has died, aged 112, the Guinness World Record says. It's kind of a bit weird, the Guinness World Record people putting this out, but he died on Monday at a care home in Southport. John Tinniswood was born in Liverpool on the 26th of August, 1912, the year the Titanic sank. He became the world's oldest living man in April of this year, following the death of a 114-year-old man in Venezuela. His advice for staying healthy was to practice moderation. Oh, they always say that, don't they? If you drink too much, or eat too much, or you walk too much, oh, loving his work, if you do too much of anything, you're going to suffer eventually. Wow. But, well, family, I mean, it's a good innings. John Tinniswood, very, very sorry to hear that. But I mean, that moderation thing. Yeah. It always comes that. It's like people say, how do you get your marriage going? And it's always just sort of like, being, compromise and a sense of humour.
No.
Emptying the dishwasher when you're told to. That's the answer. Exactly. That's the answer, boys.
Yeah, excessive levels of sarcasm in my house. Because you need to have that, don't you?
I've got to be honest with you, if my husband ever... We just had our wedding anniversary, 17 years. We've got an 18-year-old. Don't do the maths. My mum didn't notice. We just had our wedding anniversary. If I ever got an anniversary card from my husband that was not full of sarcasm, then I'd be really worried he was having an affair. Yeah, if it was like all lovey-dovey, I'd be like... Oh, you sing someone else.
yeah, and I think you need that. Lessons in how to empty the dishwasher, how to fill the dishwasher in my household.
I mean, if I had an Olympic sport, it would be how to get 5 more things into the dishwasher.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, literally. You know that thing like how many... You know the kids or the husband, they load the dishwasher and they go, it's full. It's not full. No. You could get another entire dinner party's worth of stuff in there.
You can.
This is what the show's going to be about from now on.
Yeah, but dishwasher Jenga is important.
I think more marriages break up over dishwasher loading than they do over affairs. That's my theory, and I'm going to stick to it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that all the way.
Anyway, on that note, I'd love to get your thoughts, actually. We didn't have time at the end of the last hour, just before we talk about benefits, back when we were talking with Chris Snowdon about, obesity, cracking down on obesity, and Boris Johnson says it's the church and people have got something empty in their lives and that's why they're turning to food. And we've got this crackdown on vaping and on smoking, and there's just a general sort of wagging your finger about people's lives. Now, I try and be healthy. My family will try to be pretty healthy. Want to live a long, healthy life. I want to live to 112. If I'm in good nick, brain's still vaguely functioning, I'd be very happy to live to 112. Like this gentleman who's just died. But, I mean, it does seem to me a lot of people do make bad choices, but is it up to the state to get involved? And the likes of, Henry Dimbleby sort of wag his finger at people and tell them where things should be in supermarket aisles?
No, it really shouldn't. What happens to personal responsibility? We all know...
But also the personal right to live a bad, unhealthy life if you choose.
But we all know that eating an entire cake isn't very good for you.
Depends how big the cake
But it's quite nice, and we like it, and we know that if we're going to sit on the sofa and have a packet of crisps, a family-sized bag to yourself, it isn't going to do you any good. But it's not all the time.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, never done that before, honest. But you need to be able to move around. You need to exercise your own choice as to how you live your life.
And also, crucially, leading into the benefits issue, if you do have negative impacts on your health, you shouldn't expect everyone else to pay for it and pick up the bill.
Precisely. You need to go and sort that out yourself. You need to go and get moving, walking, whatever. What
do you make then of the government's back to work benefits plan? We're told that too many people aren't working by the Prime Minister. The announcement's going to be the formal white paper. It's going to be announced by the Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall. She managed to go on telly on Sunday and basically say absolutely nothing. There doesn't seem to be anything pretty solid in this. It's all been briefed in advance. There is this youth guarantee, which basically says if you're aged 18 to 21, you've got to be in work or you've got to be in training of some sort, and if not, you might face benefit sanctions. That's literally the rule now, and yet we've got, 1 million people, I think, under the age of 24 not working.
But every new government that comes in promises to do something about it.
Why is it so hard? I don't see why it is too hard. If you're willing to have a few bad headlines, if you're willing to have, the BBC do one of their things, this is my favourite thing the BBC does is when they do somebody. So look, there'll be people who in dire need. We don't want to be hurting people who are desperately in need, who need food to put on the table and genuinely are struggling and want to work, blah 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 blah, and people who are genuinely ill. That's what the welfare system is supposed to be for. Very proud and happy to pay taxes to fund that. But we all know the people who could be working. We do know. I mean, everyone in their families knows. Everyone's got one. I've got one in my family. You've got one in your family. You know friends. You've got friends' kids. You know perfectly well there are people like that. But one of the things that I just find really fascinating is how the BBC or Sky or TV, they'll do an interview with somebody saying about how awful their life is and how they can't afford to live and they're starving. And they've had to go to a food bank because they haven't got their benefits. And every single time, without exception, it's a woman who's got arms the size of like, Sinbad the Sailor. I mean, they're literally massive. And she's going, I'm having to skip meals. I'm thinking, I don't think you skipping meals is going to be a problem for you, my love. I think this might be a good thing for you. I mean, but it's almost laughable. These people saying we can't afford to eat. Like, are you kidding me? I've done poor. I have done not having enough money to be able to get to work poor. Okay, only temporarily. I've led a very lucky life, but I've been done poor. And I'm telling you what, I looked great when I was poor. I was really slim because there was no spare money for anything. No snacks, no nothing, no fizzy drink, nothing. There was no spare money for anything like that. I mean, do you think that the government is willing to do what is necessary to do to get people off benefits?
No, I don't think they are, because they're going to have to make some really hard choices, and this government in particular doesn't like to be unpopular, and it likes to have a think about it.
Are you sure they read that memo?
Well, no, they really have. He doesn't like to be criticised. The Prime Minister doesn't like to be criticised. He gets really, really tetchy. We used to see that a little bit with Rishi Sunak. Nothing on this level. It's quite stunning. But you are.
They're not used to being questioned, are they?
No, they're not, and they don't like it because they think they're right. And why should we dare question what
I think is if you were really good at your job, and if you're really, if you were right, okay, Rishi Sunak wasn't in power for that long, and he did announce some good things, and then he kind of rode back on them because he was a bit of a focus group Prime Minister. But Keir Starmer absolutely believes that he is morally righteous and that he's a good thing for the country. But the proof is in the pudding that we're no longer allowed to eat. The proof is in the pudding, which is that, do you get more people into work or not? Is that, I mean, everything needs to be judged not on, a new logo for the job centre, which is what it will be judged on. It needs to be judged on, have you got people off the benefits roll, and are we spending less on benefits and getting more people in work paying tax? That's it.
Yeah, but do you remember when George Osborne came in and he had the two-child benefit cap, the bedroom tax that's not a tax? I always have that argument with my husband.
And again, it was spare rooms. If you've got a spare room, we had when I was a kid, we had no money. We had lodgers. We had paying lodgers because we couldn't afford the bills without it.
But do you remember Labour hand-wringing over all of that? But those were really tough choices that had to be made, whether you agree with them or not. So what's different to Keir Starmer and the problem that he's facing? He's going to have to make those decisions too.
But he's not willing to do stuff that he thinks will be. Well, he's not willing to do stuff that will upset his people, and his people be people who sort of think that they patronise people who are poor or working class, and they patronise them. They've got low expectations, or they'll do worse in school. It's not their fault. It's because they're poor. We can't expect them to turn up to work on time. We can't expect them to be able to get a job, and it's this patronising attitude. But at the same time, they combine it with this incredibly middle-class, bourgeois sort of thing. Everyone needs to find fulfilling careers. Not everyone has a fulfilling job. No. There are lots of jobs that you can do which are, you know, they're kind of... My husband calls them, like, grunt jobs. He always says, give us a grunt job, like, you know, sweeping the patio or, you know, or carrying some boxes in. It's actually very satisfying, but it's not necessarily a intellectually fulfilling job. But, my God, it's more useful than a lot of the stuff that people like you and me do.
But you have to do those jobs.
They need to be done.
And I think young people...
doesn't function without them.
Exactly. And young people need to learn that even if they've come out of university with a degree, sometimes you have to start at the bottom and work your way up. You aren't going to be handed something.
Well, sometimes, pretty much unless you've got a daddy or a mummy who are that well connected. Yeah. Everyone needs to do that, and it's good for you. I learned more waitressing than I learned in any other way, in terms of
working behind a bar.
Honestly,
it gives you some interesting stories to dive into, if that's the only thing.
It teaches you a lot about human nature, doesn't it? Well, I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk to 87222. Message us on X at Talk TV. I want to hear from you. How would you tackle the rocketing benefits bill? Do you have any faith at all that the government, saying they're going to get Britain working with major benefit reforms, they're actually going to do that, especially national insurance going up, minimum wage going up, all the other costs, hospitality, retail, the sort of places where you could actually take on somebody who didn't have any skills officially, you know, but you could train them up into doing the job. Those are the very jobs where they're saying we're just not going to be able to employ more people. We're going to have to let people go. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Don't forget, calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Lots of texts and tweets coming in as well. We'll get to those in a moment. Let's talk also about this story about Donald Trump. He's planning on day one in office, so the day of the inauguration, January the 20th, and lots of presidents in America do this. They sign these executive orders. They get straight to work. He is planning to announce tariffs, 25% tariffs from day one on Canada and Mexico. He says basically they don't deal with the border invasion, deal with the illegal migrant problem. He's also going to, I think, is it 10% tariffs on Chinese goods as well. What do you make of this? Because tariffs, you know, lots of people think, well, he's right-wing, he should be in favour of free trade, it's all about big business. Tariffs aren't good for customers because it means they have to pay more. Yeah. And one of his shticks is, I'm for the working man and I'm going to cut prices down, because they've had a big problem with inflation as well in America. But you're not going to get prices down with tariffs. A trade war pushes prices up.
It does. Now, I understand that he's backed himself into a corner a little bit with one of his greatest big missions, which got him elected, was to sort out the migrant problem in the United States. So you can see that this is part of it. And I wonder sometimes how much of this is just him putting it out there, saying, I am willing to do this, and then seeing what the reaction is. Because quite often you'll get the reaction, Canada, Mexico, not so much the Chinese. I don't think they'll care too
But the Chinese entire thing is, we rely on the Chinese cheap goods, okay?
Yes.
But equally, China relies on the West buying their goods, because their whole system will collapse. The whole, the only reason they're able to carry on going is there's kind of an agreement, well, basically, as long as we're still all getting richer. Yeah. Bearing in mind, 30 years ago, this was an absolutely devastated third world country. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not sure that that's going to really make that much difference, and it is 10% that he wants to increase. So I do wonder sometimes if this is just, I am willing to do it, let's see what you've got in return. And because he's been in power before and people have seen him take action, they might well sit up and think, and also he's made this threat before and people have acted. Yeah. I mean, again, you'd want Mexico to take action like that as well. I mean, we're going to be talking to Stephen Wolfe in a few minutes' time, in the next hour anyway, about tackling this, because lots of people are saying, well, why doesn't Britain sort of threaten these sort of things to get France and other countries, or some of these developing nations where we do see people arriving here to tackle this issue? I'm not sure that will work. I don't think we've got quite the same might.
No, and I don't think we have. And what are we going to do to the French? We're not going to take their cheese. Well, I quite like French cheese.
Yeah, the fizz, quite like the wine.
Exactly, I wouldn't like that.
I mean, let's not cut off our noses and start our faces. But there's a lot of talk about what Britain should do if we get tariffs as well. And You know, are we going to be sort of, you know, grovelling to him? There's no reason necessarily why we should be facing tariffs, but then a lot of people will agree, and I would agree with that, you know, idea of America first, putting you know, American jobs first. And when he did actually, you know, say, I'm going to penalise companies that import from abroad, but if you bring, you know, if you back, you know, onshore your production again, then back into America, I'll give you tax benefits for that, so it makes it worth your while. You can you're employing American people. You know, this does actually work. The free trade is great, except when it's a free trade effectively in labour, when it just makes people poorer.
Exactly, and we saw
with the EU.
And that's the point, is that I think that we will be looking at this very carefully. I think Donald Trump will hopefully give us a little bit of an advance warning, but did you see the sanctions that the tariffs that we might impose? Harley-Davidson motorcycles.
And Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels, and
that
also
might affect a few people in the office.
Levi jeans. An extra tariff on those.
Yeah, again, and just makes everything more expensive.
It does,
this isn't, although, you know, a lot of the finger wagging brigade will enjoy that, won't they? Things people enjoy being more expensive, they like that.